auf einen Melange mit dem Process Wizard. So, welcome to my video podcast on a melange with the Process Wizard. John, good
Thank you for
morning.
having me, Christoph. Yeah, good morning. Good morning from Berlin.
Perfect. So, John, my very first question, as I'm the so-called Process Wizard, I also need you to have a acronym for your name, and I need some suggestions from you, and I'm looking forward to hearing some suggestions from your side.
Yeah, I have a brain freeze right now. Oh.
Okay, I
that's that's
have.
a that's a very tough question to ask on a Monday morning. Like come up with an acronym, especially that's going to stick with me for I don't know how long your video is going to be on the internet. uh,
Okay,
so
then
there.
I have something in my mind, and you can tell me
Okay.
if this works for you. As you are a design sprint expert, of course, I have thought about, and I mean, you're not only a design sprint expert, you even have developed a design sprint. That's why I thought about the Design Sprint Revolutioner. What do you think about?
I'm not sure if I revolutionized the thing, but definitely I worked on it and we've adapted it, and hopefully we improved it. For lack of a better word, I don't know, use it. It
Then
also saves me from coming up with with an idea so early in the morning. Yeah, this is a fun way to do an introduction, though.
so but that's only the pre-introduction, because
Oh
first
my
of all we
god.
will use the Design Sprint Revolutioner.
Or we can use
Um,
names. Like I'm good with names. you know.
yeah, so we will use now names, but nevertheless, as I'm gonna be recognized as process wizard, my counterpart also should be recognized as a very similar acronym. Do you know what I mean?
I see what you mean. Yes.
But of course, it's very comfortable for me that I still can call you John.
I hope so.
Um,
So I can
and
answer you because like I need some time to get used with this new acronym. So
yeah,
until then, feel free to call me John. I respond to this name.
perfect. But now let's start with the real introduction, because of course,
All right.
every podcast, every video podcast usually has a introduction, and I mean, I could now ask you the standard questions. Yeah, what's your expertise? What have you done, etc., etc. But I think as this is a melange, so we are on a kind of coffee table, on a virtual coffee table. I and the process wizard is not drinking coffee with every person. So we are friends, in my opinion, and that's why I wanted to ask you if you still can remember when we met the first time. And so I mean, we met virtually the first time. If you still can remember this first meeting we had.
Oh my God, this is such a tough question. I do remember having the call. What we discussed. Now, I would assume we discussed you wanting to learn more about the design sprint and the program that we ran in Berlin. But like, if you ask me any specific about the conversation, my brain's void, empty. I think we
Yeah.
all
So
have limited storage space. All right. I do remember our conversations once we met in person. A lot of them revolving around German and or like your German versus Hochdeutsch here. But yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I joined this Design Sprint channel on Slack, I guess it was, which
Hmm.
was created by the original Design Sprint founders, so by Jake Knapp, etc.
Yeah.
There you have to should introduce you, and I've introduced me in a way that I said, okay, I want to use it for my process projects, from process management projects, and therefore try to adapt the design sprint a little bit. And it was really funny because actually the most answers were kind of harsh. So they really said, yeah,
Oh
why
yeah, I
to
remember
adapt
now. Yeah.
it, etc. And you have just been, hey, Christoph, really cool. I've made some real projects experience with it. Just make a call.
Mhm.
And then we talked about it, and then I asked, you even offering trainings, etc. And that's how
I remember
everything
now.
evolved. And the
Yeah.
call was actually really funny because it was, I think it was 1 year after COVID breakout. So we were all at home, and you were sitting on your couch very smoothly, and Dana, your wife, was running around in the background. So it was a real chill call, actually.
Yeah, no, I
Perfect.
remember. I
So
remember now.
at
And
least
then you
John.
decided it would be a good idea to join our training in Berlin, and then we got a chance to meet in person.
Yeah, exactly. And it was the first training in person after the pandemia.
So that must have been September 2020,
2021, I think, 2021.
2021.
And good that we're talking about the training because for me, the design sprint was always an option to tackle or to solve a problem within 1 week. So it was, at the beginning, it was, so when I just have read the books, etc., it was always about time saving. So 100% focus on one
Mhm.
topic and time saving. But then I joined the training, and in the introduction, why you have founded the company, how you have come to the design sprint, you have shown us a video about a sinking ship. And I would love to hear the explanation what a sinking ship actually has to do with one of the most important benefits of a design sprint.
Yes, the video, I'm going to correct you a little bit because the video is not about a sinking ship, but it's about a ship that was newly built and they were launching it. And then at launch, the ship sinks, right? So the analogy is to any project or any initiative you're working so hard to make it happen. You invest your time, you invest lots of money, resources, building something for, I don't know, few months, 1 year, whatever it takes, and then finally you're ready to ship it to the world, show your product, your service, whatever it is, and then it flops, right? And then you realized you didn't design it properly, whether you didn't answer to customer needs or the business idea was not right. Anyway, whatever the reason is, it flops, and you've just wasted so much time and money. And that's where design sprint comes into play because you can see in just 4 or 5 days whether your idea has traction or has legs or has any kind of potential. You get this sort of validation and confidence before you start building your solutions. And that's why we're showing this video, because yeah, it's a good metaphor to show like this is what could happen to you if you don't validate your solutions first.
Yeah, totally. And it was a real, well, I don't know, can I say eye opener for me, or a real aha effect, a kind of
Mhm.
eureka effect, because it is not only about solving a problem or an issue, a challenge within 1 week. It's even about, okay, getting already the first data about it, the first customer feedback, the first proof of value, kind of, and know if this direction makes sense, and you can really go
Mhm.
forward and start the developing of the solution, actually. So it's absolutely amazing.
It's funny speaking about this getting the customer feedback and this first reaction to your product and service. I've been talking to lots of innovation or people working in innovation. Let's call them like this. And it's still amazing how few actually do experimentation and have regular customer feedback and reactions. It's I still don't know why. It's one of the easiest things to do, and it's eye opening. At the same time, it doesn't happen as frequent as you might think.
Yeah, so but I'm totally with you. So from my former working experience, what I have seen so often that but and I'm really curious if you have the very same opinion about it or a similar opinion about it, because what I have seen so often is that upper management, so is it might it be C level or vice president level or whatsoever, um, has a solution in mind or wants a solution for a specific topic, and then everyone is working for it, and
Mhm.
shortly before the release or when there is the release, everyone recognizes, okay, either we have designed it completely wrong, or the customer was not even asking about it, the customer doesn't need it whatsoever. And that's something which I have experienced so often in the past years, actually. And it's,
Mhm.
in my opinion, it's a waste of money, actually.
What can I say? I experienced the same. And nowadays we're being brought in to help companies build these sort of solutions. Now it generally starts with someone, could be one of those senior executives or decision makers you talk about, having a solution in mind, and they want it built, and then they bring us in to facilitate a design sprint to develop that solution. However, as part of our process, and this is something that we've changed about the design sprint, as part of our process, we introduced a step that's called problem framing. So it's totally fine if they have a solution in mind, but then we're going to ask questions. Why do you need this solution? What problem is it going to solve? What is it going to do for your business? What is it going to do for your customers? So we take their solutions, and then we kind of work it backwards. I'm just going to give you one example. We've been brought in to help a company build a loyalty program for their customers. Obviously, that's a solution. It's not a problem. So, yeah, we used a process that we created. Speaking of processes, right? Like we also created a process that's called problem framing, and starting with this solution first approach, we worked backwards until we uncovered the root cause of the problem and the real problem we wanted to solve. And that senior leadership was totally fine with that, because we had not just dismissed their solution. We said like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let's see why we're doing it. And they were on board with us during the entire process. So then when we reached to that final state of the problem, they were like, yes, this is what we're actually trying to solve. And it wasn't a loyalty program.
Yeah. So, and it's really funny because I have made similar experience. So in one of my former companies, um, the marketing team, so the social media marketing team, reached out to me and told me, yeah, we have to improve the process of getting ideas or getting news from inside the company and publishing them. And then I've gathered everything. And I mean, we have known the challenge, but I told them, okay, because there were many different stakeholders and other teams involved.
Mhm.
And then I've decided to make a 1 day kind of problem framing workshop. And at the end of the day, we figured out, okay, the process actually to get the news and publish them is really smooth, and we cannot improve a lot with it. But the root cause is that the different stakeholders, the different teams, do not talk with each other. So everyone is doing their own stuff without letting the others know what happens. And so which is on the one side good, because I told them, okay, you really, and I told the decision makers, I told them, hey, you really have to see how you can um, break this department insulas and make it a more working together team, actually. But this also meant that there was no job for the process wizard, actually.
Well, you did your job. You had a good process, and then you realized that the problem was not about the process, but rather about communication and collaboration. And that's, I think, that's still a very good outcome.
Um, I have now a very interesting question for you. So, for example, as you know, I'm always very, I have expertise in the fields of process management, process automation, hyper automation. And I personally think this entire area of no code, low code process automation, especially for internal processes, can be kind of game changers for companies in a way. If companies are applying the used possibilities or the offered possibilities very smoothly, they really can be ahead of their competitors who are not doing this. Now we have the design sprint method. I would like to know from you if you think if company using design sprints kind of mandatory for framing problems, solve challenges. Do you think this also can be such a game changer that those companies have a business advantage compared to the competitors who don't use it?
That's a very interesting question. Um, we actually looked at some research. There has been some research done that companies that adopt design user-centric methodologies like design thinking, and design sprints are a subset of design thinking, they actually have an edge over the competition. So this was like real research that had been done, I think, in 2015-16 by the Institute of Design. I have to look it up, but yeah, it has been proved that companies that adopt human-centric methods as part of their processes have an edge over the competition. So my simple question here is yes. Now, it also, I think, the more important thing about it is how you adopt these sort of methodologies and design sprints, because design sprints in particular, right? Because we're talking about the design sprint, at least that's my expertise. um, Design sprint is a great tool for solving a problem, but it requires the right input, because if you don't have the right input, you can't expect to get something valuable at the end of it. And especially if you think about applying design sprints in larger organization, things can become very complicated and complex in a very short amount of time. I mean, the whole landscape of a corporate is very complex. You can't just get seven random people in a room and say, okay, this week we're going to run a design sprint, because it's not going to work out. Like, what problem are we going to solve? Who's going to implement it afterwards? Do we even have the right people in the room? Can we talk about this topic? Is anyone else in the company working on it? So there are like so many unknowns that you can't just run a design sprint. So I think, yes, design sprints can definitely help organizations, but it's how you implement them. That's what's more important.
Do so that's quite an interesting thought, especially with corporates, um, because what I have now in mind is: do you think the probability that startups or small companies are successful is higher if they use the methods of the design sprint more than their competitors?
Oh, absolutely. Actually, the whole process was invented in by for startups. When Jake Knapp wrote the book Sprint, he was working at Google Ventures, so he was working with startups that were backed by Google Ventures, and the Sprint method was what they used to validate the ideas and then build the MVPs, right? Um, so absolutely, I think the process as it was written, I think you can apply it directly to startups. It works very well because it's about having one big challenge, which startups usually only have one big problem that they're trying to solve, whatever that problem is. They have a small founding team, maybe a couple of additional experts. So you have the perfect context for running a design sprint with them. The problem is, though, and I've seen it with many startups, is the fact that startups have funding. And then what do they do with this funding? They hire engineers, they hire designers. The founders are really convinced about their ideas, much like those business stakeholders with their solutions. It's the same thing. It's just that it's in a startup environment, and they just burn through the funding rounds, building it and building it without thinking of validating. So to me, that's even more amazing that startups don't use this as, I don't know, like a mandatory step in their process. Right? Like, why don't they do it? I have no idea. So especially like the recipe works directly for them as written. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and uh, I can assure you, I also do not have any idea why startups don't use it,
Because
why any
I know that
companies
like
don't use it.
I've been invited in one of the big startup accelerators to, how to say, to advise startup founders, and the programs work like you get you're incubated in this incubator. I'm not going to name names. You get some funding, and I was talking with all of these founders, and they were explaining me their solutions, and it's like to the whatever problem they were trying to solve. And then I was suggesting, but would it kill you if you, before you build this MVP, you spend 1 week, you know, doing a design sprint, prototyping your solution, showing it to a few customers, and then start building? It's just 1 week. No, we already have funding. We know our customers. We know what we want to build. So we're just going to build it. Very hard to get them out of that mindset. That was my experience, right? I'm sure there are like many founders who validate their ideas, but you have to ask how many, because I think there is this stat. I'm not sure how true it is, that 90% of startups fail. Maybe it's 80%, maybe it's 70%, but still it's a super high percentage. So maybe that has something to do with not really validating ideas before you're building them.
And what is very interesting, because actually the design sprint, so the week, you cannot only use for testing your product, testing your solution. You even can use it for your strategic direction. So also your for your vision slash mission slash strategic product, under brackets, isn't it?
You can use design sprints to solve any sort of problem. So you can apply it to strategy as well. Because at the end of the day, it's about alignment. You get a group of people together in a room, and then you have them come out with a solution. Generally, when we talk about strategy, it's a lot about decision making, and it involves leadership or executives, right? In that sort of context, we tend to use more the problem framing approach in order to align the leadership around, okay, this is our strategy, this is the direction in which we want to go, and get the buy-in. And then with design sprints, we involved middle management or people who are responsible for implementing that strategy to come up with solutions to it. So that's how we've been using it, because generally it's very hard to get a bunch of C levels in a room for 4 or 5 days to run a design sprint. just not going to happen. Um, Last year, actually, we had a very big project with a very fast growing company. I think they doubled in size to about 1,000 employees in less than a year, and they had almost an entire new leadership on board. And again, we had to do some strategy work with them, and we did problem framing. They were so busy, we could only do problem framing. They were available 3 hours in 2 different days, so 6 hours in total. Like, and it makes sense. Those are everyone had a C in front of their names. They're very busy people. They're responsible of many things. You can't keep them in a workshop for a week. But then, even those 6 hours, that proved it was enough for them to decide on the strategic directions, and then we ran design sprints with their teams to make it happen.
Yeah, and I mean, and so to this point, so I think that's so it's on the one side one of the easiest, but on the other side one of the hardest challenges to get the participants of a design sprint, get them really for 1 week or so.
Hmm.
Actually, it's only 4 days to be honest, but to really get them free for 1 week. And to be very honest, I'm not fully understanding this. Um, so I'm not fully understanding this because first of all, there are already so much scientific results that if you focus on one thing for 100%, then there's so much more output, so much faster, with so much more quality. So there's this one study that um, we lose kind of 70% of our time only because of these pop-up messages we have on our smartphone, on the laptop, which already
Hmm.
shows, okay, if you focus on one thing and really focus on it without distractions, you are so much better. Secondly, so if one of those persons who say I'm not available for entire week, what happens if this person is sick and missing for 1 week? Does the company then fall apart or something like this? I mean, so we we live in times when nobody can tell me I can make time free for 1 week or at least 2 3 days, something like this. Do you know what I mean?
It is a question we get quite a lot in our training sessions, but for us, it's about having the right people involved at the right moment. And generally, when we run a design sprint inside a large organization, and we mostly work with large organizations, it's on a big problem that they want it solved. And then talking about the right people at the right time. First, we lead with problem framing, and that means we're going to involve the leadership for half a day or a day just to make sure that we're working on the right thing, and that kind of ensures everyone in the organization that they're focusing on the right thing, and we have the buy-in already. So once we have the buy-in, then it's much easier to make time for your subject matter experts to take part in a design sprint, because that had already been blessed by the leadership. This is our top priority, this is the problem we're trying to solve. Like, I have something very well defined in my hands. It's not something fuzzy. We're going to run this thing called a design sprint that no one knows about to do something magical. No, like, the way we pitch then is we're going to be solving this very specific problem in your organization that the entire leadership wants to solve. And knowing what the problem is, that allows us to target the right experts in the company. So, like, okay, having this problem, who are the 6 7 people that are most suited to solve it? And then when we approach those people, we say, like, you are invited to this workshop because you have this expertise that will help solve this problem that you care about. So yeah, it's about finding this connection between people, between problem, and and then we've been doing this for what, 6 7 years now. We've never had people not participating or dropping out of the design sprint or anything like this. And I hear many facilitators, because we're part of facilitator communities, I hear many struggle with this, getting people's time. We never have this issue because, like, once you have a clear problem, once people are passionate about solving it and they know their boss wants to solve it, it's easy.
Yeah, okay. So I, of course, I believe you. I think there's again a
Well, that's the only answer I have. So
but I think there's again a difference if you a company who is buying external people to do this design sprint and solve a problem where we have to say honest, and the the severity of the problem must be already quite high if you make the decision to buy external person, or if you're an internal, so a kind of in-house consultant who is offering this in-house in the company and try to kind of sell it bottom up. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, I know what you mean, but I don't think the process should be much different, even if you're selling it bottom up. I can tell you, we an example from one of our customers. So again, we train their team in facilitation of problem framing and design sprints, and it was also very hard for them to get people's time for 1 week to do a design sprint. So instead, what they did was inviting some of the stakeholders to a problem framing workshop. But it wasn't a full 1 day workshop, it was a 2 hour thing. In every company, there are lots of problems. So they just tell them, instead of running this meeting, we're going to have this workshop in which we want to discuss problem X. Since those stakeholders already cared about it, they already had meetings about it, it was a no brainer. So, in just 2 hours, this team, using problem framing techniques, helped align the stakeholders. And they were like, oh, we've made so much progress. We want some more of this. And then it was the next 2 hour problem framing workshop. And then they said, we want to do another one on a bigger topic. So, it was a gradual process, right? Because at the end of the day, they got value out of it. So then why not do it? And all of a sudden, they said, we're not going to run endless meetings on these topics. If we want to make a quick decision, we're just going to do a problem framing workshop.
Yeah.
So that's another way of approaching it. Just recently, I ran another problem. I know we're talking about design sprints here, but problem framing it's so close to that as well. It's the missing piece of the design sprint, right? Because design sprint is about solving a problem, but generally the hardest part is defining what that problem is. So we've recently run another problem framing workshop, and it was with the design and product departments inside a large organization. For them, there were aha moments after aha moments because they realized how they were not on the same page on about many topics. So the main benefit of problem framing for them was getting on the same page and knowing what each others are doing and what tools they're using and what processes they're using. So that had already been a great result for them.
Yeah.
Very long answer.
So
Sorry, I was deviating the
no, no, I'm
conversation.
totally with you. But so when I'm looking at our clock, I have to admit we are reaching the end soonly. I would like to finish our conversation with a very funny thinking experiment. So let's imagine we have a startup who decides to test their product. So we run a
Hmm.
design sprint. 1 week is over, and the result of the design sprint, what also can be a result actually, is that customers cannot do anything with the product, so cannot identify with it, don't like it. So it's a the result is okay. This product doesn't solve the problem actually. Um,
Mhm.
so then the second week, the startup decides to do a problem framing workshop to kind of reframe the problem. So what is the real issue? Um, it's figuring it out in the second week and coming up, so having this new challenge. And in the third week, a design sprint is done for this newly created challenge.
Mhm.
And then they have the expected results, everything is working, etc., which would mean that it is possible for, and not only for a startup, but it's probably more it's I think it's more probably for startups, but theoretically for every combination, you can do a 180-degree turn
Pivot.
regarding
Mhm.
your solution within 3 weeks. What do you think about this thinking experiment?
I think it would be great if many
That would
startups
be.
adopted it because, yeah, in theory, you can pivot in 3 weeks. It happened to us with, especially in the early design sprints that we've run, mostly with startups, we could pivot in 2 weeks. Because at the end of a design sprint, you get three outcomes. You get validation of your solution, which is yay, we can start building it. You get your solution is not validated, case in which maybe the solution is not good, or maybe the problem is not the right problem to solve. So either or, but anyway, based on the feedback you get from customers, you learn which is it, and then you can adjust. Or the other one is you get mixed feedback with some learnings that will help you improve the solution. So whatever the outcome you get, it's a good outcome, right? Because you learn and you know what you're going to do next. But it's not only startups. I would say this brings even greater benefits to corporations. One of the sprints we've recently done, the person bringing us in, he said after we had a conversation about 2 months after the design sprint, so they were already implementing the solutions, and he said, John, doing this design sprint saved us 9 months of work because the solution they had involved people on three continents on totally different time zones. So, and I think three different groups. So coordinating everything was super difficult and time consuming. And that's why getting everyone in the same room for 1 week really accelerated their project. So I think. Yeah, it's as helpful for corporates as well. And I'm going to shut up because I know we're on the clock here. So,
So yeah, everything. So your insights are always very welcome, very very welcome. And you know that I always could talk with you for hours. So I love listening to your insights actually. But nevertheless, we almost have reached our end. Um, what I want to say is that I personally think life is not only about taking, but also about giving. That's why I have for my guests always a little present at the end of my podcast.
oh wow,
So you have to choose if you want the right present or the left present.
I want to have the right present.
So the right side present or the left side present.
Well, I would assume the right present is in the right hand, so I'll just go with that.
Okay, so this one. So I open it, and it's so the next time we see each other, you are invited by me on. Is it called on for a coffee on a Melange? So
Okay.
you are invited from my side,
All right.
which means
Thank you so
when
much.
I'm the next time in Berlin, I will I will contact you. And if you have the chance to be sometimes here in the beautiful Denkendorf in Bavaria, you also have to contact me.
Or maybe Vienna, right?
Or Vienna, exactly because from time to time I will be in Vienna. Um,
All right.
and I mean, in Vienna, you will get a original Melange.
See.
Um, Dear John, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for participating in my video podcast, especially in season one, which means very much to me. So, really, I hope you enjoyed it too. I hope
I
it
really enjoyed the
is the
conversation and thank you for having me.
I hope it's the perfect start into the week, and I'm pretty sure we both will hear each other again.
Christoph, again, thank you for having me. I also think it's very brave of you to do a vodcast, or is it a podcast? It's a vodcast, right? Because it's
Vodcast, a video
video.
podcast,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation, and I feel like I only got started, or we only got started with this conversation. So maybe season two we have another chat. We go deeper into other topics around design sprint processes and things like this. Anyway, thank you so much, and yeah, have a good week onwards, and good luck with
Thank,
this podcast.
thank you very much. Dear listeners, we also wish you a wonderful start into the week, and hopefully we see each other again on a melange with the process wizard. Bye.